I never believed in ghosts, spirits, or witches. I didn't want to either. But that night, something happened, something I couldn't even imagine in my wildest dreams. After that night, I was forced to believe in such things. I had no choice but to accept that there are things in this world better left encountered. The incident occurred about 12 years ago, when I was around 16 or 17 years old. I loved my grandmother's house. During the summer vacations, I often visited her. But this time, it wasn't summer. It was winter break. I loved the winter season, so I decided to spend the holidays at my grandmother's house. Upon arriving, I was thrilled to see everyone. I loved the place because of my friends, family, and the warmth they showered on me. After greeting everyone, I placed my belongings in my room and went outside to play. I had many friends there. When I returned home in the evening, it was already dark, as winter nights fall early. I washed my hands and face and went back to my room. This was my routine: play, come home, and sleep. That's why I loved it there. While lying in my room, staring at the ceiling, I heard voices from outside. My aunt and grandfather were talking. Curious, I left my room and listened to their conversation. My aunt was trying to dissuade my grandfather from going outside, while he insisted he was fine and wanted to deliver a tiffin to my uncle. I asked my aunt if there was a problem. She explained that my grandfather wasn't feeling well, and it was too cold for him to go out. She feared his health would worsen if he went to deliver the tiffin. I suggested to my grandfather that my uncle could manage without it. He insisted he would go, but I had an idea. I proposed delivering the tiffin myself. I knew the way to my uncle's factory and could easily manage it. My grandfather initially refused, saying it was unnecessary for me to go out at night as the path wasn't safe. I argued that I was old enough and could handle it. After much insistence, he finally agreed but gave me a strict warning. Take a flashlight with you, but if you hear any sounds from behind, any kind of noise or movement, do not turn back. Just keep walking, deliver the tiffin, and return home without stopping. I promised to follow his advice, took the tiffin and set off towards my uncle's factory. As soon as I stepped outside, a chilling gust of wind hit me. The cold was intense, but I had dressed warmly. Using the flashlight to guide my way, I moved ahead. It wasn't very late, about 7 or 7:30 in the evening, so I quickly reached the factory. I delivered the tiffin, chatted briefly with my uncle, and prepared to leave. My uncle reiterated my grandfather's warning. Go straight home. Don't stop or look back if you hear anything. I asked my uncle what he meant, but he only said he'd explain the next morning and urged me to hurry home before it got too late. By then, it was about 8:30 p.m. The path home was desolate, surrounded by dense forest. The cold had driven everyone indoors, and the path was eerily silent. As I walked, I suddenly heard a voice. Stop! Wait! Startled, I froze. Then the voice came again. Turn around and see who I am. You know me. I almost turned but remembered my grandfather's warning. But something about the voice felt strange, so I continued walking. The voice persisted, growing louder and more insistent. I began to run, the voice chasing me all the way. But instead of reaching home, I found myself lost. The path seemed to change, twisting and turning in ways I didn't recognize. Panic set in as the voice continued to call out, growing more menacing. In my panic, I stumbled upon an old, abandoned house. Desperate for shelter and safety, I rushed inside and bolted the door behind me. The house was dark and filled with the smell of decay. As I moved through the rooms, I noticed strange symbols and markings on the walls. It felt like the walls themselves were watching me. I found a room that seemed somewhat safe and hid there, trying to calm my racing heart. Suddenly, the whispers started again, but this time they were inside the house. "You can't hide from me," the voice echoed through the empty halls. I clutched the flashlight tighter, its beam flickering as the batteries began to die. Just when I thought all hope was lost, I remembered my grandfather's advice. I closed my eyes and repeated to myself, "Don't turn back. Keep moving forward." I gathered my courage and decided to leave the house. As I stepped into the hallway, the whispers grew louder, urging me to turn back. Ignoring them, I moved towards the door. The door seemed farther away with every step I took, but I kept my eyes forward and my pace steady. Finally, I reached the door, flung it open, and ran outside. The cold air hit me like a wall, but I didn't stop. I ran and ran until the whispers faded into the night. When I finally reached home, exhausted and shaken, I collapsed into my grandfather's arms. He held me tightly and whispered, "You did well. The spirits can only harm you if you acknowledge them." The next morning, my uncle explained the truth. The path I had taken was known to be haunted by a spirit that lured travelers into a false sense of security, making them lose their way and trapping them forever. The old house was a remnant of a forgotten past, a place where the spirit's power was strongest. After that night, I never took that path again, and I always heeded my grandfather's advice.